So the user experience is you come to us, you pay us a fee. We haven't decided what's going to be between $50 or $100, and you get basically what we call a blinded signing session. So for 1 year, you can basically get signatures off us. So what the user experience, if you wanted to say mint an ordinal or put some Bitcoin on a session, is you'd cooperate with our blinded signing service to create a Bitcoin address with your own private key. You generate a Bitcoin address. We don't see that Bitcoin address. This is all done on the client side, and you can deposit Bitcoin. You can deposit, ordinals, runes, whatever you want.
Welcome back to another episode of Bitfinex Talks. I'm your host, Ricardo Martinez. Today, I'm joined by Nicholas Gregory, who's the developer behind Mercury Layer, which formerly was known as Mercury Wallet, but has now evolved into a full Bitcoin Layer 2. Nicholas, how are you today? Thank you for coming on the show.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So, Nicholas, I guess my first question to start the interview off would be, can you give us a brief description of what Mercury Layer is for those who may not be aware of the project?
Yeah, it's a Bitcoin Layer 2 platform technology, whatever you want to call it. The easiest way to explain it at a high level is, what an open dime is. You basically buy this USB stick, you put some Bitcoin on it or put anything on it, and then you can give it to your friends, you can keep it yourself, you can, becomes a layer 2 in itself, because the USB stick has a private key and you now can move it. Mercury Layer basically takes that and virtualizes it. So the best way we explain it, it's virtual open dimes. So you come to us, you pay for like a session, we basically co-sign a private key with you, a public key with you. You own that public key, you own your own private key, and we do some cryptographic tricks for you to move that key to somebody else and generate a new private key. So it's a way of moving private keys around off-chain.
What would you say is the advantage to moving private keys around off-chain, and what use case are you guys fulfilling?
The advantage is the on-chain fees go away, and you can do it instantly and atomically. Atomically being you could swap a private key with someone else, and we've done some work where you can swap that with a lightning payment. But the use case, originally it was very much, kind of like people were using it for kind of like settlement or swapping private keys around. If I'm honest, a lot of the projects now that are talking to us are Ordinals projects. They want to, kind of move around their JPEGs or their runes or whatever, and we're not really getting too involved in them, but we are. They do talk to us there, and we as a company always wanted it to be a way of like supporting Lightning. We thought it'd be like we haven't finished this yet, it may not ever work. We were open to the idea of a way of balancing Lightning channels around, because Lightning channel is essentially just a private key to a dual funded channel. You could move around those private keys, and that's where we're doing a lot of research. But the way the service works, it's blinded. We don't know what people are doing. We don't know how people are doing things with it. We just provide a service to do a blinded signature. So, and more creativity, the better. We can't filter anyway because we're blinded. So if people end up doing funky JPEGs, we wouldn't know about it. As long as they pay, it's good.
And these Ordinals and Runes projects that are showing interest in Mercury Layer, they are primarily looking into it as a cheaper way to trade the Ordinals and rare Satoshis and stuff like that back and forth?
Yeah, I guess when you have high transaction fees, that market struggles a bit. And they go to centralized platforms and they want a bit more flexibility there, which I totally get. And if that, even if you're the most ardent Bitcoiner that believes Bitcoin should only be used for payment, if they end up going on Mercury Layer and using us, and that's taking pressure off the fees. So maybe the miners won't like that, but it's probably good for your everyday Bitcoin user.
Yeah, no, I agree, especially considering the Runes launch and its impact that it had on fees right around the halving. So with Mercury Layer, can you kind of explain how it works? Like give us like a high level overview?
Yeah, so what we run in the back end was called a blinded signer. So we originally built something called Mercury Wallet that wasn't blinded. And what happened in that period is Taproot came out, and with the Taproot release, you got Schnorr signatures. So Schnorr signatures, we were able to do music too, which allowed us to be fully blinded. So in the previous version, we would see the public key, and now we don't. So the user experience is you come to us, you pay us a fee. We haven't decided what's going to be between $50 or $100, and you get basically what we call a blinded signing session. So for 1 year, you can basically get signatures off us. So what the user experience, if you wanted to say mint an ordinal or put some Bitcoin on a session, is you'd cooperate with our blinded signing service to create a Bitcoin address with your own private key. You generate a Bitcoin address. We don't see that Bitcoin address. This is all done on the client side, and you can deposit Bitcoin. You can deposit, ordinals, runes, whatever you want, and that now is what we call well, it's on the Mercury layer. Although when you think of it, the Mercury layer is actually on the client; it's not on the server. So maybe we should call it the Mercury service. But anyway, but that's it now, and you've got it. And then what happens? You've got a 1 year period where you can now move that private key or that whatever it is on there to somebody else. So to move to somebody else, you have to actually interact with us. So how do we know you are who you say you are? Well, because you've got a signature and a cryptographic key, we cryptographically verify you that you are who you say you are. And then that allows you to interact with the service so that we sign another transaction or generate another signature for you to move the ordinal or the funds to somebody else. And I said it's a 1 year session. Every time you move, you lose 8 hours, and that's part of the security protocol. And one of the nice things about this, why this is a true layer two, is if you were to wake up one morning and we weren't there, you always have a back out transaction, which is basically a standard Bitcoin transaction that you can broadcast onto the network to retrieve your assets.
Okay, cool. And then I guess from a user perspective, how is transacting on Mercury Layer either similar or different to transacting on Bitcoin's base layer?
It's similar in that you have a private key and you're signing a transaction or you're signing something. It's fixed denominations. So if you do have 1.2745 Bitcoin on there, that's all you can send. So you can't basically break that up. You can't do small denominations. You can't. So it really is moving around your private keys. And the service itself doesn't even know if it's Bitcoin. I mean, all it is a blinded signer. All the verification, all the work is done on the UI or the client library.
Okay. And you mentioned that it's substantially cheaper than sending Bitcoin on chain. When I send a Mercury Layer transaction, is there any fee that is incurred from using Mercury Layer?
No, I mean, you're paying the 1 year fee for the 1 year blinded service. I mean, from an operational point of view, we're no different than like a multi-sig. Some of those multi-sig services like Casa or Unchained. You pay $250 to have I use Unchained for our company stuff. It works quite well. But what you're doing with Unchained, you're paying $250 per year for them to hold a private key and sign whatever you want. But then you have some way of operating without them. We're not that much different than them when you think about it. In that sense, it's the same behavior, it's the same service.
Okay, cool. And then I guess once you pay the fee to get into Mercury Layer, you have like unlimited swaps within that 1 year time period, or
Yeah.
can
So
the 8 hours run out and prevent you from transacting?
the 8 hours prevent, and that's part of the security protocol. We didn't just invent this. So how do you stop previous owners taking your assets? Well, we use something called a decrementing time lock. So if we were to vanish, you have a window where you can retrieve your assets before the person before you does, and that's where the 8 hours comes. And every time you move it, that decrements, and that's using like a lock time, which is a construct in Bitcoin transaction script.
I've seen a lot of chatter about possible CTV soft fork. Would CTV be beneficial for Mercury Layer, or is it kind of two different things?
I'm not an expert. We did do some work on any prev out. I believe that as part of the L-enhance, some of the other constructs that are bundled with CTV would help. Essentially, what they would do is remove that 8-hour decrementing time lock, so you would have unlimited transfers. But we're not spending too much. I mean, we've spoken to the OpCTV guys. We're supportive of it, but who knows when that's going to happen? Yes, and I think OpCat is maybe overtaken CTV as generating. Yeah. mind share. So
Okay.
we'll see. So, but yeah, covenants in general would help the protocol for sure.
Can you speak a little bit about your work that's underway currently with integrating Mercury with Lightning?
Yeah, so we've got a few things going. The first thing we're going to release with is a way to swap with a Lightning pre-image, and the use case there is very simple. You've got something on your Mercury Layer session. You want to basically give it to somebody else, but you want to do it atomically with a Lightning payment. So now you can basically, the way it works is we run a little, well, we have some open source software, and it's baked into the protocol that you would release the ordinal based on a Lightning payment. And that's our first thing that we think, well, we will get working with Lightning. But the goal is to do more and more with Lightning. We don't see this as competing with Lightning. It's very different. And hopefully we'll make Lightning better.
You mentioned that Mercury Layer transactions are pretty fast. Like, how fast are they compared to, like, say, a Lightning transaction?
Well, the bottleneck is there is a lot of verification that goes on, but we're talking in the sub. I think verification is about 0.4 seconds, so it's pretty quick. And the bottleneck is
relatively instant.
Yeah, it's not as fast as Lightning because there is a bit more verification, but it's relatively instant. The bottleneck is us in it ultimately, because you basically have to cooperate with us to generate a new signature. Also, the receiver has to then accept it as well.
With the high fees that we've been witnessing in Bitcoin and the expectation that they may continue due to increased ordinals and then also just fees being higher after the halving, could Mercury Layer be used for like peer-to-peer payments similar to Lightning as a way to save on fees?
Maybe. I mean, I think the fixed denominations isn't an issue, but people are experimenting with Mercury. We've had a few chats with people involved with Fedimint who see it as a way of kind of going from multiple federations. I think someone tweeted the other day, could you share like a stake coin across multiple eCash implementations so that they could basically share custody of one of these stake coins and use them as kind of a way of like settling between each other. So maybe, I think as we hit a high fee environment, people are going to look at layer twos that weren't being looked at before. I think everything's going to help.
You just mentioned that you guys are looking into a possible integration with eCash. You mentioned that you're looking into a Lightning integration. What about side chains like Liquid or RSK? Have you guys explored integrating Mercury Layer with any side chains?
Not really. We as a company, we used to build side chains before we were building state chains. So we are familiar, but no, we haven't really looked into it. I mean, we've played with the idea of doing a version inside of Liquid that has, because Liquid, I think, supports any prev-out, but that I don't think there would be much uptake. But I mean, it would be more to test out covenants.
With the recent increase in institutional interest in Bitcoin, do you see any like institutional use cases for something like Mercury Layer?
Well, the original use case, if you remember, for Liquid was to be settlement between institutions. There are advantages of using Mercury as opposed to like a side chain. It's much more instant. It's less. It's not custodial. So if the side chain, the side chain ultimately, the side chains we have right now are very much custodial. And I'm not, even if you're not worried about them losing your funds, if a percentage of them are down, your funds are stuck. So there is that. I think, the lightweightness of Mercury, institutions could, in theory, just take our code and build their own blinded server and, be a lot more expressive in what they wanted to do. I think that could be interesting. We're not actively selling to institutions because we've done that in the past, and institutions are slow to move. They tend to want to use you as free consultants. But who knows with Bitcoin, arguably becoming more compliant, more institutionalized, maybe we could reopen. Maybe they'll come to us. But
okay, that was going to be my next question: is if any of them have come to you?
No. I mean, I'm in London. I don't think we have the institutional adoption, but maybe it is in the US. But who knows? We're not anti it. I mean, we are a business at the end of the day, and we have to do what we have to do.
With Mercury Layer, I guess, is there any you can only send fixed amount, that it can only be in Mercury for a year. But are there any shortcomings or limitations that you see for Mercury there?
I think the fixed amounts is a challenge. Some people don't like the trust assumptions. I mean, every layer 2 has trust assumptions. We do rely on an HSM, to be honest, to delete key shares. But yeah, the biggest thing I think is the fixed denominations. Also, we still have the same problem that every layer 2 is. If you had an item on Mercury Layer that's, I don't know, just say you have something that's worth $50 and transaction fees are $150, it becomes redundant, and I think that's a problem all layer 2s have right now. But I don't think there's a scaling solution that's going to fix Bitcoin. Really, it's going to be a combination of things, and it's going to take a lot of time. And this is a useful tool in that. Hopefully, that the whole ecosystem.
This week has been kind of hectic in the Bitcoin world. We've seen a lot of enforcement actions from authorities. You mentioned that if Mercury Layer, the company, doesn't exist anymore, people can still unilaterally exit Mercury Layer. But in the case of like authorities coming in and seizing the server, would user privacy be protected?
Yeah, I mean, we the data we collect, we're quite open about it. We obviously it's a back-end server, so if people come in with an IP address, we have that. People have to pay us, although we don't collect payment information. We use a third party, but that's public. We'd have that data, and in terms of our internal databases, we just have 3 columns, which is a hash, which represents the session ID, the date that I think it was created, and then a counter of each time that's updated. That's all the data we can. I mean, we couldn't store more data if we wanted to. So, if rules change, I can't predict the future, but the protocol doesn't. It's not like we can take more information. We can't. So we're in the business of selling blinded signatures. So, but we're not really truly a payment software anyway. We're a blinded signature service. So, and we operate in the UK. There is legal clarity in the UK. That's all. I can only go to a UK lawyer, show the regulatory rules, tell them if we're legit or not. And it wasn't easy to be legit. You have to really explain the technology. You have to explain how it works. And, lawyers speak a certain language. Us, we're geeks. We speak a certain language. A lot of this is educational. And we don't just do a Mercury Layer. We do Lightning software as well. And believe it or not, Lightning was more complex to get through a lawyer than Mercury. Mercury was like, hey, look, we're a dumb signer. We could sign anything. They were like, okay, this is all. When you go through Lightning, that was actually a lot. That was, in terms of my personal time working with lawyers, that was probably 6x more work. But I think it's just part of the process. I think there's a lot of confusion. For us who work in the space, it's obvious, but for people that are not in the space, crypto is just one big thing. They don't see necessarily the difference between Bitcoin and monkey pictures.
So would you say that's because of the limited technical understanding that lawyers have, I guess, for the complexities of Lightning? Or
I think, it depends on the lawyer you speak to. I think there's not much Bitcoin infrastructure being built in the UK. So I think when lawyers speak to them, they probably have a lot more work doing tokenized assets or things like that, so ICOs and stuff like that. So I think Lightning is still very niche, and my understanding is the same. I speak to American Bitcoin layer 2 companies, it's the same there. I mean, we're a lot smaller, even though Bitcoin is the biggest asset on coin market cap. In terms of our infrastructure, we're one of the smallest. I mean, how many layer 2s are there on Bitcoin? Well, okay, I'm going to say there's only a couple of layer 2s on Bitcoin. Now, we've obviously seen a lot zero knowledge proof sidechains, but a lot of them are just Ethereum ports. There's a lot more infrastructure being built on other blockchains. So lawyers have a lot more understanding. But I find, we say a lot of bad things about the regulators, which I also, clearly there's things that are happening in the US, but once you spend the energy explaining it to them, it's not that bad. I mean, a lot of this is education. And I went through this, believe it or not, 22 years ago. My first job out of uni was working for a voice over IP company, or company that did voice over IP, and they were getting sued by the telephony companies. So, and this is a much bigger industry, and it's much more painful.
That's very surprising that you say that, because with London being like a huge international financial center, you would think that there would be much more interest in Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin still like pretty niche in the UK?
Yes. I try to go to like City of London events on, they don't even say crypto, they say digital assets. Bitcoin barely comes up. It's just not well understood. And that creates problems, because these people, when you mention crypto, they think FTX, they think all of that. And Bitcoin, for them, sometimes it feels like you're talking about, you're in an IT event and you're talking about a COBOL mainframe. It's like this old thing that, oh yeah, that was the original one. People still use it. Yes. It's kind of weird. And we don't, and unlike the US, we don't have, because of our expensive energy prices, we don't have any miners. And I think the US, I know there's challenges right now in the US, but I do think the US were helped by having all these miners there in Texas lobbying and educating. We don't have that. So the Bitcoin community is, it's grassroots. There are Bitcoiners in London, but there's no engagement really that much with the regulators.
Mercury is pioneering state chain swaps. Are you aware of anyone else that's working on state chain swaps at all?
No, the closest project we look at that looks like us, and they're not state chain, is maybe Arc, but they're very different. But they're doing off-chain, sending keys off-chain, totally different concept. But we're probably the only thing that looks similar from a top-down level. There's a few state channel projects in Ethereum, but we haven't really followed on them. But Arc is probably the closest to us. Yeah, and you could, and maybe coin pools, but I don't know if anyone's building that anymore.
Oh, okay. I'm totally unfamiliar with coin pools.
There's a lot of ideas out there, but they all rely on changes to Bitcoin. So I think Arc can work with Bitcoin. I think Arc needs CTV, but it can work with Bitcoin right now. But a lot of the user experience is not as good without covenants. I think that's one of the problems. Building layer 2s in Bitcoin is hard without covenants. But there is innovation going on right now. You've got the BitVM guys are doing some interesting stuff. We'll see if anything comes there.
Would something like BitVM easily be integrated with Mercury Layer?
I don't know. Look, funny enough, we do actually do zero noise proofs in Mercury as a way of verifying, kind of exchanges. But when we built it, people weren't able to raise lots of money off zero noise proofs, so we didn't really talk about it. But no, I think the way they're doing it with circuits and stuff is interesting. But that's very much experimental. So I don't think that would help us. Maybe could it reduce some of the trust assumptions? Maybe, but we stay in touch. We look what they're doing, but right now, no.
With Mercury Layer, like, what do you guys have planned moving forward?
Yeah, we're going to probably go live in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We do have various projects that are building ordinal type stuff. So we're changing the API, and any free cycles we have, we try and integrate it more into Lightning. So it's ultimately people tweet about could Mercury be used to give you a zero conf Lightning channel. We would love to support that. It's a lot of complexity, but for us that'd be very cool. And we're still hoping Lightning picks up a bit more traction, so that it's worth us investing time there.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked that you think is important for listeners to know about Mercury Layer?
No, we don't have a wallet, and there's a reason for that, because when we released the first version, Bitcoin Layer 2s weren't that interesting, and a lot of people kind of said we want an API to work with. So we do have people in the Nostra community, Fiat Chaff, who's showed a lot of interest in integrating. But we really want people to come to our Telegram group, tell us why the APIs, what needs to happen in the API to make it easier to integrate with and work with others. And another question we get asked a lot: it's centralized. Yes, it is centralized. Can we run our own Mercury Layer? Absolutely. we would encourage that. Is there interoperability between different blinded signers? No, there isn't. They're not fungible. But yeah, Fedi mints aren't fungible. But if there was enough non-fungible Fedi mints, someone's going to build layers between them, and we would look into that there. But yeah, we would like other people to build blinded signers and work on interoperability. Everything we do is open source, so there's no reason why someone can't run one.
When you say Mercury is going live in a few weeks, are you speaking in a sense more for developers can start playing with it, or will end users like myself also be able to use Mercury?
Well, we will put it on production net. So at the moment we run it in testnet, and people have been playing with it here and there.
Okay, but if there's no wallet, like how would an end user interact with Mercury Layer?
Yeah, well, there is a test wallet, there's a command wallet, but there's no pretty UI right now.
Okay. So you could interact with it through the command line, like
correct? Yes.
Bitcoin core node or something.
Yes. Yeah, you don't need a Bitcoin core node, but yeah, you can just at the moment there's a command line client. Yeah.
Okay, cool. What do you guys have like a date already set forth for when it's supposed to go live, or is it still kind of tentative?
Yeah, no. We are running stuff on LiveKit. We're just getting operationally doing boring stuff like what happens if a box goes down, things like that. Rate limiting, things like this.
And what's the response been like so far from like the Bitcoin community?
Good. I mean, better than what it was when we released Mercury Wallet. I think there's more demand for layer 2s. I think whether you like it or not, the Ordinals guys and the Runes guys have created a desire for demand for cheaper transaction fees. So they've been they're interesting. I mean, they seem to be interested. Yeah. So
what are your thoughts on Ordinals as like innovation on Bitcoin? Do you see them as a positive influence or more of a negative influence?
Yeah, it's a permissionless system. It's not for me to decide how people use it. I mean, one man's junk is another man's treasure. I don't have an issue with it. It'd be interesting if they're still around long term, because I've been in Bitcoin for a while, and we've seen things like this come and go. Counterparty, is it Mastercoin, OmniLayer? I think, is that the same project? I don't know. Is Ordinals and then Runes going to stick around a long time? That's interesting. It looks like it could, so that's why I'm more curious, because I'm happy that it brings in a lot of people from other blockchains, because worst case, these guys are going to throw money at this and build better wallets. And let's be honest, Bitcoin wallets are not the best. Yeah, they're good for technical people, but they're not the kind of wallets you can give to your mom. And the Ethereum world, the Solana world had much nicer wallets. Yeah, the Solana wallets you could give to your mother. And if these guys come in, raise some money on JPEGs, do their token flipping, create better wallets for Bitcoin, and then they leave, and we're still left with better wallet infrastructure, that's a positive. That means more people are going to be doing self-custody, which, as you know, self-custody is kind of an attack being attacked right now. So that would, I think you've always got to stay positive, because, and if people come for JPEGs and the JPEGs flop, I mean, it gets them onto the Bitcoin blockchain. They learn the ecosystem. They know what a UTXO is. They stick around.
Do you believe that self-custody is going to be able to weather the storm of regulatory oversight?
Yes, but look, even before the events of the last few weeks, if Bitcoin ever hit mainstream adoption, I was always skeptical that many people would do self-custody, just because most people are not Bitcoin. They're not going to manage private keys. They were going to use custodial apps anyway. So, and Bitcoin is the social consensus of all its users. If you want ETFs to come, if you want the Michael Saylors of the world to come, they are going to come with probably more regulatory oversight and compliance, and you have to accept that. I mean, that's the way the world is. I mean, as a business, I accept that. That's what I signed up to. So
it seems like in Europe, maybe not so much the UK, but the EU has been pushing around these ideas of possibly banning self-custodial wallets for crypto-based services and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on a situation like that arising?
That's not my understanding of the law. I think they're making it hard for online companies to do online payment, anonymous payments. But I still think you can still custody assets yourself. Yeah, the regulation in Europe and the UK, a lot of people don't like it, but having a form of regulation is better than none, because what you're seeing in the US is you're seeing different departments saying different things, and that's creating confusion. And sometimes bad regulation is better than no regulation, because at least you can build around that. And in the UK, the regulation was probably bad if you're an exchange, because they've made it much harder to onboard people. But at least it gives some clarity to self-custody. So,
would you like to give information to the audience if they want to keep tabs on Mercury Layer's development or get involved with the project?
Yeah, so our website is mercurylayer.com. If you go there, you'll find our Twitter handle and our Telegram. I mean, we try to keep the Telegram handle as technical as possible. And whenever we're doing new releases and stuff, we tweet about it. We try and get engagement. And yeah, we really want devs to build on it and tell us why it's bad. And if you don't trust us, we'll help you run your own Mercury Layer instance.
Nice. Well, Nicholas, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure discussing Mercury Layer with you.
Thank you.